Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 46, A Bountiful Harvest. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Huang Jingjun was utterly despairing. Even his elder brother had been defeated, losing an arm. Who could possibly save him now? The young hunter standing before him, wielding a blood-stained longsword, was still the same person, but his perception of him had completely transformed. Earlier, Huang Jingjun had tried to force Qin Ming to gather herbs in the heavenly light, dismissing him as naive and laughable, asking his brother questions even as death loomed. Now, looking back, he realized that the faint sneer on his own lips and the jovial smile on his brother's face had been mirrored by Qin Ming's own silent amusement. Hadn't the hunter been looking down on them all along? The three-colored flower was nearing maturity, its luminous mist swirling around it. The intoxicating fragrance grew stronger, clearing the mind and invigorating the spirit. Deeply drawn to the flower, Qin Ming turned to dig out the jade box buried beneath the rubble. He feared missing the optimal harvesting time, unsure if the spirit flower would wither quickly after blooming. Huang Jing clutched his severed arm with his left hand, his right side drenched in blood. His armor was soaked, and he staggered backward, leaving bloody footprints in his wake. Seeing Qin Ming turn his back, Huang Jing didn't attempt a sneak attack. Instead, he cast a deep glance at his younger brother and prepared to flee. If he could survive, even as a cripple, it would be enough. Although Qin Ming was eager to pluck the three-colored flower, he wouldn't make such a basic mistake. How could he allow a third awakening expert to escape right under his nose? Without even turning his head, Qin Ming hurled the long-handled black gold hammer with his left hand. His strength was terrifying, a full-force swing could shatter city walls. Huang Jing screamed as a sharp crack echoed the moment he turned, the sound of bones breaking. Through the excruciating pain, he felt his spine shatter, his body collapsing under its own weight. The world spun wildly before he crashed to the ground with a sickening thud. After retrieving the jade box, Qin Ming strode forward. The three-colored flower was visibly blooming at an astonishing rate, its petals unfurling into a dazzling display of color and beauty. Nothing mattered more now. Qin Ming plunged into the swirling, iridescent mist of heavenly light, heading straight for the spiritually potent plant radiating its intoxicating fragrance. It grew beside a fissure in the rocky terrain, standing only about a foot tall, yet its blossom was surprisingly large, nearly the size of a fist when fully unfurled. Heavenly light erupted from the fissure, causing Qin Ming to feel a tightness in his chest and a sense of unease. Bathed in this radiant downpour, the spiritual flower shimmered like crystal, its petals fully unfurled in full bloom. In the heavenly light, the flower's main body was silver, streaked with crimson, while its edges glowed a translucent blue. Its petals resembled willow leaves, but were sharper, even angular at the tips. Arranged in countless overlapping layers, they formed a dense, sword-like thicket, beautiful yet radiating a palpable sense of sharpness. "It's ripe," Qin Ming exclaimed. He cleared away the loose rocks and carefully dug out the entire three-colored flower by hand. From its leaves to its roots, every part of the plant displayed the same tricolor pattern, brimming with potent life force. With a snap, Qin Ming sealed the jade box and exhaled deeply, relieved to have successfully harvested this priceless spiritual flower. Today is truly a double blessing. Qin Ming grinned, brimming with satisfaction. After avenging himself against the Golden Rooster Ridge, he had unexpectedly acquired both the blue jade iron and this rare spiritual flower in quick succession. Beside him, Huang Jingjun coughed up blood in fury. Those were our words. He thought, his life force nearly exhausted, his end drawing near. Thank you both for your generous gifts, Qin Ming said sincerely. I've toiled for days in the great mountain without reaping such a bountiful harvest. Huang Jing, equally enraged, felt his pent-up fury threatening to burst from his chest. He had envisioned a glorious future, poised to refine the heavenly light using the spiritual flower. Now, all his hopes had been shattered. Regardless of their imminent demise, Qin Ming approached each of them, delivering swift, clean finishing blows to send them on their way. During his search, he unexpectedly found a candle on Huang Jing's person. After a moment's thought, he realized its purpose, to seal the seams of the jade box. Ingenious. He marveled. Even in mutated creatures with a keen sense of smell wouldn't be able to detect the contents now. Finally, Qin Ming dragged the Huang brothers, the old man from Golden Rooster Ridge, and the two Golden Rooster Knights into a single pile. Reluctantly, he laid down the long sword and silver spear. These weapons were simply too conspicuous to carry out and use. Chaos had erupted underground, with various mutated creatures swarming in. Qin Ming arrived at an area filled with deafening roars, instantly attracting several ferocious mutant creatures. Soon, the old man from Golden Rooster Ridge and the Huang family brothers were reduced to flesh and blood elixirs for the mutant creatures. Above ground, raptors circled, their silver wings spanning over 10 meters. These giant eagles, accompanied by other flying mutated creatures, monitored the entire Great Rift Valley. In the underground world, even Cao Long, Mu Qing, and Wei Jiru's faces paled as they huddled with their clan elders. We've already seen creatures that have undergone 4 or even 5 mutations. Let's stay underground. At least we're deep within the Great Rift Valley, not near the exits, so our position is relatively safe. The mutant creatures can't maintain a prolonged attack here. Once word gets out, Kaisha City will send reinforcements. Even Qinming was shaken by the chaos in the karst cave. In this chaotic situation, it was no longer feasible to fish in troubled waters. The scene was too bloody, some mutated creatures were brutally tearing people apart before devouring them. While searching for a way out, he had already killed several mutant creatures. He couldn't risk heading deeper into the Great Rift Valley. Relying on his memory, he advanced toward the area where the mountain people had disappeared. Qinming estimated that some veteran hunters might find a way out of the valley. Having spent years roaming the Great Mountain, their survival skills and self-preservation instincts were honed to a razor's edge. Their immediate, correct decisions upon entering the underground passages were a testament to their expertise. A massive white bear with bloodshot eyes and a blood-soaked maw charged toward Qinming, its razor-sharp claws impaling 2 corpses. I can't take down this giant beast. Qinming sensed immediate danger. This creature was far more ferocious than any mutant creature he'd encountered, even those that had undergone 3rd mutation. He fled swiftly. He'd had similar near-death experiences since childhood, having lived off the land in the Great Mountain since he was 14 or 15. Those early years had been a constant dance with death. Back then, he'd faced ordinary wild beasts, with Lu Zi, Shu Yuping, and others watching his back. Now, he was up against a giant beast that had undergone multiple mutations. Qinming hadn't faced such a bloody, terrifying scene in years. His only option was to keep running, stopping meant certain death. Fortunately, the underground passages were a dense labyrinth, as intricate as a spiderweb, with some areas so narrow they barely allowed passage. The white bear was blocked, its furious blows against the stone walls shaking the entire tunnel violently, sending rocks tumbling down. The 2 corpses impaled on its claws were now mangled beyond recognition. Qinming knew that Golden Rooster Ridge and the Three-Eyed Sect had suffered devastating losses. The few survivors were already rushing toward the territory controlled by Huang Jingda's family. The underground karst cave was stained with blood along many of its passages. The roars of mutated creatures and the cries of humans echoed through the tunnels, a grim reminder that any encounter between the 2 sides would inevitably end with one side falling. Qinming pressed forward through a narrow passage. Emerging into another area, he immediately witnessed the gruesome death of an elder from the Three-Eyed Sect. The old man had been impaled through the chest by the massive, curved horns of a golden giant bull. This elder, a 3rd awakener cultivator, had met a particularly tragic end. A notorious wanderer with a terrible sense of direction, he had wandered in circles, unable to escape this area. Had he possessed even a shred of navigational skill, he would have long since reached the Huang family's territory. Now, he was utterly disoriented. The golden giant bull's massive horns were already adorned with 5 corpses. With a violent shake of its massive head, it flung the bodies against the stone walls with thunderous crashes, leaving trails of blood splattered across the rock. Beneath its hooves lay more crushed corpses, reduced to pulpy masses by the beast's enormous hooves. The bull's silken fur was nearly completely stained crimson with blood. Spotting Qinming, it immediately exhaled flames from its nostrils and charged forward. Seeing the creature's savage ferocity, Qinming knew he stood no chance. He turned and retreated back into the narrow passage. Now, hurling threats and curses at this terrifying mutant creatures was utterly futile. Qinming could only pray that the beast would leave quickly. This feeling of having his life hanging by a thread, completely beyond his control, was unbearable. Qinming desperately yearned to grow stronger again. In this place, if even a smaller, more mutated creature appeared, he would surely meet his end. Bang! The golden bull's horns, sharper and more terrifying than any gleaming sword, shattered the stone wall into fragments. Massive chunks of rock crashed down, raising clouds of dust. The flames spewing from its mouth scorched the rock wall crimson, radiating waves of intense heat. No wonder even the elders of the 3rd awakener couldn't withstand it and met their gruesome ends in these tunnels, Qinming thought, his heart pounding as he retreated deeper into the passage. A full quarter of an hour passed before the golden bull finally departed, unwilling to leave the 2-legged beast unslain. Qinming waited a while longer until the outside grew quieter. He cautiously ventured out, encountering some mutant creatures, but none as dangerous as before. Eventually, he squeezed through a narrow crevice barely wide enough for a person to pass. Beyond it, the path widened slightly, marking the final territory reached by the mountain people. Qinming stumbled forward, the absolute darkness broken only by the faint glow of his sunstone. Even with this light, navigating the treacherous terrain took him over an hour before he finally emerged from the subterranean fissures, escaping the Great Rift Valley and finding himself in a dense forest. Qinming couldn't help but admire the experienced old hunters. If he had been tasked with finding this escape route, he would never have discovered it so quickly. He felt a pang of irony. The mountain people, who had initially been in the most precarious situation as miners, were ultimately the ones who escaped alive. Of course, this was partly because they had begun their self-rescue efforts as soon as they entered the underground tunnels. If they had been hunted down like the Golden Rooster Ridge and Three-Eyed Sect members, they would never have had the time to search for an escape route. Qinming exhaled deeply, relieved to have finally escaped. The great mountain was eerily quiet. During his journey, he had barely encountered any living creatures. He slowed his pace, reasoning that most of the dangerous mutant creatures in the mountains had likely migrated to the Great Rift Valley. As he pondered this, he suddenly stopped. If I remember correctly, the lairs of the white bear and the golden bull are both less than 10 miles from here. They're among the most formidable creatures in the outer regions of the Great Mountain. Acting decisively, Qinming turned and sprinted in a specific direction. During his encounters with the two giant beasts, he had narrowly avoided being killed. Though he ultimately escaped unscathed, the ordeal had been terrifying. If he hadn't discovered that narrow passage, he would either have been torn apart by the bear's claws or impaled on the bull's horns. Qinming resolved to raid their lairs while the beasts were away. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel. Night Without Borders. Chapter 47. The End of the Song, The Departure of the Crowd. Author. Chen Dong. Translator. Shadow Knight AK. Editor. Shadow Knight AK. Under the night sky, the mountain forest was shrouded in darkness. The vast expanse lay eerily silent today, except for the grazing herbivores. It was difficult to encounter a predator today. Qinming sprinted through the dense woods, abruptly halting at the edge of a thicket. He took off his armor, set down his black gold hammer, and dug a gleaming set of refined gold armor from the snow. These were the belongings of Wang Nianzhu, who was already dead but still a wanted man. Qinming quickly changed into the armor, fearing that the bear cubs or donkey calves he might encounter possessed high spiritual intelligence and would remember his face, which would spell disaster. Everyone knew that Wang Nianzhu had slain the blood snake and wiped out the mountain patrol group led by Fu Entao and Feng Yan. His current foray into the mutant creatures, lair amidst the chaos, seemed perfectly logical. After fastening Wang Nianzhu's longsword, as clear as a spring, to his waist, Qinming covered his face with a cloth. He wasn't strong enough yet to risk carelessness. He then ran 8 miles in one breath, arriving at a stone forest surrounded by dense woods. The area was littered with rocks, some piled into near mountainous formations. It stinks. Qinming recoiled. The white giant bear's lair was notoriously unhygienic. Even from a distance, the stench of bear dung filled the air. Deep within the stone forest lay a fire spring, its crimson mist swirling around shimmering, rippling waters. Similar in scale to the second-tier fire spring in Yintang, Silvervine town, it was a coveted resource. Despite its multiple mutations and formidable strength, the massive white bear lacked the qualifications to venture deeper into the great mountain and claim a more magnificent fire spring. Yet for the mountain people, this place was already a treasure trove. But the bear had utterly desecrated this precious site. Animal pelts, bones, and carcasses littered the ground, while massive piles of bear dung lay scattered near the fire spring. Clearly, its hibernation had been incomplete, forcing it to continue hunting frequently throughout the mountains. It must be an old male bear, Qinming muttered, surveying the scene. Too solitary. He's wasting this treasure by living here alone. He searched the area, but the stench was overwhelming, and there was practically nothing of value to be found. Frustration boiled within him. He had traveled so far, risked so much, only to find nothing but the stench of bear dung. Qinming desperately wanted to set the place ablaze and burn it clean. Even if the old bear had offspring here, he would at least vent his anger. If all else failed, he could chop off a pair of bear paws to take back. He couldn't even say the place was cleanly poor, because the reality was unbearably filthy. The stench was so overpowering, he nearly vomited. This was the first time Qinming had been completely thwarted, leaving him feeling utterly helpless and suffocated. He desperately wanted revenge, but in the end, he had to pinch his nose and give up, unable to endure another moment in this place. Just as he turned to leave, a flash of scales caught his eye in the fire spring, instantly revitalizing his spirits. This old bear actually knows how to raise fish. Qinming rushed to the edge of the fire spring, where he spotted fish shadows in the 6 to 7 jong square pool. However, his excitement quickly turned to disappointment. These were just fingerlings. That foul-smelling old bear is utterly shameless. These fish will never grow to maturity, he'll just scoop them up and eat them before they get a chance. In the end, he targeted the fingerlings. He kept none shorter than his finger, but scooped up every one that approached the length of his palm. The two largest were about 7 inches long, bringing his total catch to over 20 fish. These were spiritual fish, their bodies shimmering blue and translucent in places. When fully grown, they could reach over a meter in length and would be brimming with spiritual energy and vitality. Unfortunately, with that impatient old bear around, they would never reach such a size. Even though they're small, they still possess some spiritual energy. These will make excellent nourishment. Qinming always carried a beast hide pouch when venturing into the mountains, a practical habit born from the harsh survival conditions. Now, it proved its worth. This was one of the reasons Huang Jingjun smirked secretly, his lips curling in amusement. Without looking back, Qinming dashed toward Wild Bull Ridge, 7 miles away. He was exploiting the time difference, and speed was crucial. Under the night sky, the mountain range stretched endlessly, blanketed by vast forests. As Qinming burst into the Golden Giant Bull's territory, he was immediately stunned. Deep within the forest lay a second-tier fire spring. Instead of pooling in a basin, the crimson, glowing liquid was channeled into a chaotic network of fire fields. The fire spring wasn't hot, far cooler than human body temperature, but it warded off the biting cold brought by the wind and snow. The fire fields teemed with lush greenery and vibrant blossoms. The old yellow bull is quite the diligent farmer. Qinming marveled. The great mountain was blanketed in snow, with snowflakes still drifting down, yet this area pulsed with such vibrant life, a truly captivating sight. A vine laden with fire pears caught his eye. Among them, 20 or 30 glowed crimson, emitting an enticing fruity aroma. These fruits replenish qi and blood, Qinming thought, quickly harvesting them. He then spotted a patch of low-growing plants, barely a foot tall, each laden with sweet and sour purple sun fruits. So many purple sun fruits. A few of these will quickly restore energy when I'm exhausted. Old Bull has planted nothing but treasures. Qinming's admiration for the Golden Giant Bull surged. Although the chaotic fire field hadn't been meticulously tended, the high spiritual energy of the second-tier fire spring ensured all the plants thrived. Unfortunately, Old Yellow Bull's vast domain, where he led a herd of wild buffalo across these mountain ridges, left little spiritual substance for awakening. It seemed his bovine descendants had devoured it all. Disappointed, Qinming ventured into the lair of a creature that had undergone multiple mutations, hoping to find something that would grant him a third awakening. I can't rely on Old Bear or Yellow Bull anymore. It seems Old Man Lu is the only reliable one. I'll head back and join him in the mountains. The fire field was abundant with fruits and melons, each carrying a trace of spiritual energy, a potent nourishment for ordinary humans. Some were already ripe. Seeing such delectable fruits in this icy wilderness temporarily dispelled Qinming's disappointment, and a glimmer of light returned to his eyes. He harvested every ripe fruit, whether crimson berries or golden melons, filling both his animal hide bags to the brim. Are there any calves left behind? Qinming scanned the depths of Wild Buffalo Ridge. Suddenly, his pupils contracted. He spotted no buffalo calves, but there was a donkey calf. It resembled Old Weasel's mount, but couldn't be the same one. This was just a small hairy donkey, and it was stealing melons too. In the distant fire field, the melon dropped from the donkey calf's mouth with a thud. Startled by the sudden appearance of the armored two-legged beast, it froze in place. Little donkey, don't you dare make a sound. Qinming turned and fled. The little donkey posed no immediate threat, but its powerful connections made it dangerous. If it started braying here, who knew what kind of monsters it might attract? Qinming was convinced this must be a descendant of Old Weasel's mount. How else would a donkey calf dare to sneak into this place to steal melons? Qinming sprinted away, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Amidst the chaotic fire field, the donkey calf stood bewildered. It had been about to bolt, but the two-legged beast had fled first. Feeling guilty, it didn't dare bray. Instead, it wandered around like a street urchin, gorging itself on melons. After a satisfied burp, it flicked its tail and scampered away. Long after, a great white bull emerged from the depths of Wild Bull Ridge. This creature had undergone 3 mutations. With the Old Yellow Bull's vast territory and resources, it was only natural to keep bulls guarding the homestead. The great white bull had spotted the donkey calf the moment it appeared. Instead of driving it away, the bull hid itself, knowing the calf's lineage and not wanting to disturb it. We mustn't let the little one sense anything, the great white bull said in its bovine tongue. Later, we'll let Senior Donkey know we've been taking good care of his offspring. Even in the remote Great Mountain, a bull born into this world had to understand the ways of social etiquette. Moo. Could it be? A whole herd of donkeys. The great white bull approached the fire field and froze in utter astonishment. Qinming sprinted 6 miles in one breath. When he sensed no pursuit, he finally exhaled deeply and continued his journey to retrieve his armor and warhammer. He also took the opportunity to collect the jade iron he had hidden in the mountains. With all the dangerous experts now gathered at the Great Rift Valley, the surrounding areas were completely deserted. Xiao Qin, you're finally back safe. If anything had happened to you, we would have felt guilty for the rest of our lives. Xu Yuping, Yang Yongqing, and the others had been waiting anxiously at the village entrance. I'm fine, Qinming said simply, recounting the events at the Great Rift Valley. It was a close call, but I managed to bring back some mountain goods along the way. Xu Yuping was stunned. The idea of mutant creatures organizing a large-scale, reverse hunt left him speechless. Yang Yongqing was equally shaken and filled with lingering fear. He realized that even the nobles and elites of Kaisha City would have been stripped bare in that place. When they learned that all the mountain people had emerged safely, they fell silent again, caught between laughter and tears. They could only sigh at the capriciousness of fate. The very people most likely to perish had somehow escaped unscathed. Uncle, it's so great that you're back safe. We were all worried. When Rui rubbed his small hands together, his breath forming white clouds in the frosty air. Standing in the snow outside his home, he jumped for joy when he saw Qinming return. He had run outside more than a dozen times that day, each time finding Qinming's courtyard gate still locked, his heart sinking with dread. He feared something terrible had happened to his uncle. After all, he had learned from Lu Zi and Liang Wanqing that Qinming had been taken away by people from Golden Rooster Ridge for a dangerous mission. Although Lu Zi had suffered severe injuries, his excellent constitution allowed him to venture outside with Liang Wanqing's support. 15 minutes later, Qinming arrived at their small courtyard carrying a large bag filled with bright red and golden yellow fruits. During their usual mountain expeditions, they occasionally found wild fruits preserved under the snow from autumn, but nothing this fresh. Wow, these aren't persimmons. They're my favorite red berries. Uncle, you're amazing. Wen Rui exclaimed, his cheeks flushed with delight as he devoured the fruit. 2-year-old Wen Wei clung to Qinming's neck, planting a sloppy kiss on his cheek, his babbling expressing pure joy. Inside the iron cage, the fiery red mutant squirrel leapt frantically, nearly driven to tears by the aroma, its eyes fixed on the fruit as it chittered incessantly. Bow to me, and I'll give you a red berry, Qinming teased with a smile. To his surprise, the squirrel stood on its hind legs inside the cage and began bowing repeatedly, each bow accompanied by a squeak, as if counting. Are you actually becoming sentient? Qinming's heart skipped a beat. The prolonged absence of the mountain expedition naturally sparked widespread concern. The major clans, having left small contingents in Yintang, Silvervine Town and other settlements, realized something had gone wrong. Upon returning, Qinming immediately sent Xu Yuping to Yintang, Silvervine Town with a message. In fact, veteran hunters from other villages, having recovered from the ordeal, had already dispatched their own messengers. Soon, raptors soared into the night sky, carrying urgent pleas for aid from the clans, remaining forces to Kaisha City, warning of the grave danger. That very night, experts from Kaisha City set out at once. Rescuing lives was like putting out a fire, every moment mattered. A single hour's delay could mean the loss of countless lives. The mutant creatures in the mountains had no intention of annihilating the intruders, fearing bloody retaliation from Kaisha City. As midnight approached, they began their retreat. By the time the Kaisha City experts arrived, the crisis had already resolved itself. Every clan suffered losses, some more severe than others. Even Cao Long, Mu Qing, Wei Jiru, and their group, who had ventured deep into the Great Rift Valley, sustained casualties. Some families lost 20 to 30% of their members, while others, like the Huang family, suffered 40 to 50% losses. The Golden Rooster Ridge bandits and the Three-Eyed Sect fared the worst. Positioned at the entrance, they were nearly wiped out entirely. In the end, only a few bloodied old men from these two factions managed to escape, supporting each other as they fled. The two leaders of the Golden Rooster Ridge bandits were furious when they heard the details, nearly charging over to kill the group themselves. They cursed the group as useless, saying they were worse than a bunch of mountain people. The core members of the Three-Eyed Sect in the region were equally stunned, nearly vomiting blood in frustration. The next day, Qinming, Old Lu, and others went to see them off. Cao Long, Mu Qing, Wei Jiru, and the rest were leaving. From the emergence of the special node to the battle for the mysterious resources, the mountain sweep operation had finally come to an end, and the group was about to disperse. Qinming, you should leave this place soon. It's too remote. You should go to a major city, learn and interact with others there. The resources are abundant, and the people are talented and enlightened. Yes, the world beyond is vibrant and colorful. The glittering cities are incredibly prosperous. You can see all kinds of creatures there, even spirits who have taken human form. It's beyond your wildest imagination. 500 years ago, Black and White Mountain was famous throughout the world, but those days are long gone. Before parting, they all urged Qinming to leave this place as soon as possible. During this time, Qinming also saw Ni Rui, Shen Jiayan, and the others, who came over to greet him warmly. Finally, the group departed into the distance. That night, Qinming visited Old Lu, carrying a bag of fruits and melons. Fire pears, purple sun berries, silver melons, where did you raid the lair of some powerful mutated creature? Only monsters with at least 4 mutations actively tend fire fields. You've really outdone yourself. Old man Lu's eyelids twitched in astonishment. Let me think. That old bear is definitely out, lazy, brutal, and filthy. The mountain tiger, though exceptionally strong, rarely eats plants. The old yellow bull is the most diligent, but you wouldn't have gone there, would you? Old man Lu was genuinely shocked. Qinming couldn't help but admire the old man's encyclopedic knowledge of the Great Mountain's various regions. He knew them like the back of his hand. It was precisely this familiarity that had brought Qinming here. Qinming spoke up. Grandpa Lu, that bear and the old yellow bull nearly killed me in the Great Rift Valley. When can we go to the place you mentioned to find spiritual substance? Old Lu glanced at him and said, you survived being hunted by creatures that have undergone multiple mutations. You must have found a loophole, raided their lair, and gotten away with a steal while playing innocent. Then he realized Qinming's strength must have increased dramatically. Why else would he be so eager to find spiritual substance? Clearly, he was yearning for another awakening. Did you undergo a second awakening? He asked in a low voice. Yes, I've been running a fever lately. It should be complete soon. What about you? Qinming asked. Give me 2 more days. I should be ready soon too, Old Lu replied, closing the door. Remember, we shouldn't reveal our second awakening just yet. Understood. Qinming nodded. The two exchanged knowing smiles. 2 days later, Qinming and Old Lu huddled together, studying maps and making preparations for their expedition into the mountains. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Melworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 48, An Alternative Approach. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The room was warm. Initially, Old Lu did most of the talking while Qinming listened attentively. Eventually, they both began brainstorming together. Qinming was filled with anticipation and a hint of excitement. In this dangerous environment, he yearned for his third awakening, desperate to avoid another harrowing experience of being hunted by giant beasts. If he were strong enough, the people of Golden Rooster Ridge and the Three-Eyed Sect wouldn't dare treat them as expendable resources, sending them underground to mine. Old Lu took a sip of water and said, once we enter the mountains, we must carefully observe the terrain and plan our escape routes before making any moves. Why do I sense you're not as confident as you seem? Qinming asked suspiciously, worried that Old Lu might falter at a critical moment and cause problems. Caution is never a mistake, Old Lu replied. We can't afford to lose. The place we're going contains rare spiritual substances and is extremely dangerous. Failure could cost us our lives. Qinming grew more cautious. Does Yintang, Silvervine Town have any explosives? Let's buy some. Now that you mention it, you've given me an idea, Old Lu said. We could consider those other locations as well. It seemed he had alternative plans after all. Tell me about them. In the Great Mountain, near West Gully, there's a lake where a thrice mutated old turtle lies dormant. Its entire body is a treasure trove, its blood brimming with spiritual substance. It's hibernating now. If we could dig it out while it's still drowsy, we could toss an explosive into its burrow. I think it might actually work. Old Lu grew visibly excited, almost ready to abandon their original plan and target the spiritual turtle instead. Qinming tried to temper his enthusiasm, reminding him, a turtle's shell is incredibly durable. An explosive might not even crack it. More importantly, the lake is vast. How would we even find it? Are we supposed to dig until the end of time? You're right, Old Lu conceded, calming down. Spiritual creatures are inherently stronger than other aberrants of the same tier. A thrice mutated spiritual turtle would likely be impervious to explosives, especially since this species has long legs. When enraged, they can move surprisingly fast. He shook his head, dismissing the idea himself. The spiritual turtle had already undergone third mutation 20 years ago, it must be even more formidable now. Qinming's expression darkened. Sensing something amiss, he asked, Old man, are all these leads based on information from 20 years ago? Don't worry, I'm not that unreliable, Old Lu retorted, shaking his head. He then proposed another alternative, using explosives to scare the gibbons. The massive blast would frighten the entire troop away, allowing them to raid the gibbons' lair for the spiritual substance. Qinming stared at him with a peculiar expression. Why are all his plans so unconventional? Old Lu said, from the bottom of my heart, I'd love to wipe out that gibbon nest. They're utterly detestable. Qinming asked, Old man, have you been bullied by these monkeys before? They're over 20 miles away, aren't they? That's quite a distance from here. Old Lu pounded the table. Protecting the people from harm, do you understand? In Ma Town, countless mountain travelers have had their prey stolen by gibbons, and some have even been dragged away. Hearing this, Qinming immediately knew Old Lu had personally encountered the gibbons and still harbored resentment. I don't think that's reliable, Qinming said. What if we fail to scare them off and instead provoke their aggression? They'd chase us all over the mountains, that would be disastrous. Gibbons are notoriously vengeful creatures. Old Lu countered, while not foolproof, it's still feasible. 30 years ago, someone created a massive diversion to lure the mountain tiger away from its lair, then successfully raided its den. It's a similar strategy. That's intense. Seriously impressive. Qinming couldn't help but exclaim, realizing the mountain tiger was even more formidable than the old bull of Wild Bull Ridge or the old bear. Old Lu shook his head. The mountain tiger holds grudges. Even though it wasn't as powerful back then, it was still incredibly ferocious. 3 months after the incident, it stormed into Yintang, Silvervine town in the dead of night and tore those two apart. Qin Ming, who had just been impressed by the pair and his mind buzzing with ideas, was now forced to calm down. I think all these alternative plans are unreliable. The first option, going into the mountains, is still the best. As they stepped outside, they saw people from Golden Rooster Ridge entering the village. Their mounts, ground chickens, were too distinctive, only they used these ground chickens. Golden Rooster Ridge still has people left. How did they not all die in the Great Rift Valley? Old Lu murmured. The villagers tensed at their arrival. Golden Rooster Ridge had once been a band of bandits, and even after being recruited into the government, their true nature hadn't changed much. We're here to gather information, a middle-aged man riding a ground chicken announced. How many awakeners are in your village? Come register them. Everyone's hearts sank. Were they here for revenge? Everyone knew that nearly all the Golden Rooster Ridge and Three-Eyed Sect members who had entered the Great Rift Valley had been wiped out, while every single mountain person had escaped unscathed. Given Golden Rooster Ridge's usual behavior, it was highly likely they would vent their anger on the awakeners who had fled back to the surrounding villages. Xu Yuping whispered, they've been probing some of the larger villages since yesterday. Qin Ming retorted, what do we care if Golden Rooster Ridge's people couldn't escape? They were the ones in power, yet they couldn't even outsmart the oppressed mountain people. Who's to blame but themselves? Old Lu sighed, they won't listen to reason. That's just how the world works. If you're strong enough, even high-tier aberrant from the mountains might personally attend your weddings and funerals. But if you're weak, even monkeys will bully you on the mountain. People need to become strong. He added, don't underestimate the old monsters deep in the Great Mountain. They have dealings with Kaisha City's high-ranking figure. I heard it straight from the mouth of an old mountain patrolman I knew back in the day. After registering, the two Golden Rooster Ridge members didn't linger and quickly departed. I bet they're looking to replenish their ranks, Xu Yuping speculated. The crowd nodded in agreement. Golden Rooster Ridge had suffered heavy losses and urgently needed to replenish its ranks with awakeners. Old Lu sighed, trouble's coming. Besides demanding recruits, they'll undoubtedly want money and supplies. Rebuilding their forces won't be cheap. A heavy mood settled over the group. The bandits of Golden Rooster Ridge had long oppressed the surrounding villages, and this situation seemed impossible to change. As Qin Ming and Old Lu ventured into the mountains, their unease grew. They cursed the people of Golden Rooster Ridge, denouncing them as nothing more than bandits, past and present. I wish we could wipe Golden Rooster Ridge off the map. Qin Ming exclaimed. Watch your tongue. Old Lu warned. Someone might overhear you, and that would spell disaster. Oh, right. Grandpa, you mentioned that the high-tier lifeforms deep in the Great Mountain have close ties with the high-ranking figure of Kaisha City. Is that true? Old Lu shrugged. That's what some people say. I can't vouch for its accuracy. Then why did the Great Rift Valley massacre happen? Qin Ming stared at the silent valley ahead, where countless humans and mutant creatures had perished 3 days earlier, the air still thick with the stench of blood. I suspect the mutant creature's siege of the Great Rift Valley might have been a tacit agreement between the high-ranking figure on both sides, Old Lu mused. Qin Ming turned to him. Why do you say that? The number of mutant creatures in the Great Mountain has been steadily increasing, but their territory hasn't expanded, Old Lu explained. Some of them needed to be culled. Meanwhile, the major clans of Kaisha City have been growing rapidly in recent years. According to traveling merchants, each clan has its own monopolized industry. Direct suppression by the city lord would be inappropriate. The Great Rift Valley massacre seems like a convenient solution. Grandpa Lu, you certainly have a vivid imagination. Qin Ming remarked, glancing sideways at him. This old man traveled to Kaisha City in his younger days and knows the place well. I've seen the world. If that beast in the mountains hadn't shattered my foundation with a single claw, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state now. The two continued walking, chatting as they went. After venturing 10 miles deep into the Great Mountain, Old Lu cautioned, enough talk. Once we're this far in, we shouldn't mention those ancient monsters lurking in the depths. They walked further until they emerged into a primeval forest, eventually reaching the foot of a mountain. There's a fire spring hidden within this mountain, Old Lu said. Only someone with his intimate knowledge of the Great Mountain would know about this place. Moreover, Old Lu had already scouted the area and knew that the fire spring's glow had dimmed due to the mountain's geomagnetic disturbances, one of the reasons he chose this location for their operation. A nest of silverhead ants thrived within the mountain, utterly dependent on the fire spring. Without it, their activity would plummet in the bitter cold, rendering them sluggish and lethargic. From the blood snake to the spiritual turtle, the gibbon, and now these silverhead ants, Old Lu consistently targeted unconventional creatures. Yet Qin Ming had to admit these were indeed the best choices for their current situation. Silverhead ants were fiercely aggressive, their nests teeming with terrifying numbers. Winter was the ideal time to confront them. Another crucial factor, each nest could only have one queen ant. Though surplus spiritual substance existed to allow other silverhead ants to undergo third mutation, the queen ant forbade it. We'll need steel plates to protect our bodies, Old Lu said. Armor alone won't suffice. A single bite from a silverhead ant won't kill you, but half your body will go numb for hours. If they swarm you, you'll be devoured alive. These silverhead ants were far more formidable than the black ants Xu Yuping used for tea. Ranging from the size of a baby's fist to that of an egg, they were relentlessly aggressive. Their silver-striped heads gave them their name. What makes these ants truly remarkable is their ability to brew honey wine. They gather pollen, wild fruits, and even raid grain stores from the mountains, then harness the spiritual energy of the fire spring to ferment a liquid that resembles both wine and honey. They repeatedly extract the essence from the honey wine, allowing the refined liquid to ferment again, purifying it through multiple fermentations. This process eventually yields a unique spiritual substance, a pale golden liquid. In major cities, honey wine brewed by silverhead ants commands astonishingly high prices, let alone the spiritual substance derived from the repeatedly purified essence. Qinming and Old Lu followed a fissure in the mountainside, venturing deeper. Qinming's scalp prickled with unease as they approached the dimly lit fire spring, swarming with massive ants. Anyone with trypophobia would surely be overwhelmed here. The silver markings on their bodies shimmered with a cold, metallic luster as they stood motionless. The two retreated silently, beginning to survey the surrounding terrain and plan their escape route. Over the next 2 days, they repeatedly entered and exited the Great Mountain, transporting all the necessary supplies. This is it, our final chance. In the icy wilderness, their breaths formed white plumes in the frigid air as they prepared to act. Qinming's mind churned with turmoil, not from fear or tension, but from the weight of his thoughts. If they succeeded here, after his third awakening, fragments of his shattered memories would resurface. What would he see this time? Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 49, Stirring Emotions. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qinming and Old Lu had been busy preparing everything, chopping firewood, paving paths, trapping beasts, everything was ready. Silverhead ants are omnivorous with an acute sense of smell, especially sensitive to scents they like. It's proving true now, Qinming said. They had purchased expensive honey and prepared ample animal blood, sprinkling the blood and occasionally dabbing honey along the path, drawing the ants closer. As soon as Qinming and Old Lu entered the mountain fissure, the combined scents jolted the motionless silverhead ants awake. They're starting to move. Light the fire now. Careful not to burn yourself. The pair hurled several barrels of kerosene into the fissure, tossed in lit torches, and turned to flee. Boom. Flames erupted, startling all the silverhead ants in the mountain's belly. Though many were incinerated by the kerosene, the sheer density of the swarm, a writhing mass packed together, and the complex structure of the ant nest meant many areas remained untouched by the fire. In an instant, the enraged silverhead ants surged out of the fissure like a tidal wave. Come on, you bastards. You might as well bring out the queen ant too. Old Lu roared, brandishing his thick-backed cleaver. Run. They're charging. Qinming grabbed Old Lu and began sprinting uphill. They weren't worried about the silverhead ants giving up the chase. They had scattered honey and animal blood along their path, and these creatures were far from ordinary ants. Their territorial instincts were fierce, and any intrusion into their nest would be met with immediate retaliation. Why are some of the silverhead ants flying? Qinming shouted, barely 100 meters into their escape, as a metallic clanging echoed behind him. What's going on? Old Lu was equally stunned. At least 100 fist-sized flying ants were swarming toward them, far larger than their usual counterparts. You're asking me? Qinming felt a growing sense of unease. This old man was starting to seem unreliable. Hadn't he claimed to know the great mountain like the back of his hand? How could he not know about flying silverhead ants? As Old Lu hacked at the swarming ants with his thick-bladed machete, he replied, the ant nest must be overflowing with spiritual substance. Some of the silverhead ants have undergone transformation. They weren't here 5 years ago. Your information is 5 years out of date. Qinming smashed his hammer down on the fist-sized flying ants, finding them surprisingly tough. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to crush them with a single blow. The flying ants were dark red, with even brighter and more numerous silver markings on their heads. Their transparent wings buzzed ominously above the snowy ground. Their mandibles resembled massive, blood-red pincers. When they landed on armor, their bites rang with a metallic clang, a testament to their terrifying attack power. The mere 100 or so that had appeared were enough to strip an ordinary person clean in an instant. Don't worry, Old Lu said, slashing his blade while guarding his face. There aren't many of them. We can handle this 100. No sooner had he spoken than hundreds more swarmed from the mountain fissure, their terrifying wingbeats sounding like grinding metal, a truly chilling sound. Qinming's expression darkened. If they kept pouring out in endless waves, numbering in the thousands or tens of thousands, they'd be in serious trouble. Both men were in excellent shape, reaching the summit of the low mountain in a single breath. Around them, hundreds of flying ants swarmed in a frenzy, their speed undiminished by the extreme cold. The scene resembled a blacksmith's forge as Qinming smashed the charging insects one by one with his hammer. Old Lu was equally relentless, his broadsword flashing through the snow-bright light with a constant crack as ant corpses piled at their feet. Standing atop the low mountain, they gazed down at the crimson expanse below, the sheer volume of it making them dizzy. Countless silverhead ants swarmed up the snow-covered slopes. In truth, they hadn't needed to sprinkle animal blood or honey. These vicious insects possessed an insatiable thirst for revenge and an exceptionally keen sense of smell, tracking them down by scent alone. How can they maintain this speed in such extreme cold? They've slowed down slightly, but not enough. We need to hold out longer. The pair remained on the mountain, neither fleeing nor retreating. They fought off the relentless flying ants while watching the approaching silverhead ant army, which drew ever closer. They're slowing down. Give it some time, and they might actually freeze. Let's set fire to a batch first. Warm them up and lure more ants out of the nest. Wielding swords and hammers, they simultaneously lit torches. To breach the ant nest, they first had to eliminate the massive ant army below. Be careful. Don't throw the torches in the wrong spot. Old Lu warned, genuinely worried Qinming's clumsiness might prematurely detonate the earth explosives. These explosives were byproducts of alchemical processes developed by outsiders. After spreading across the land, people gradually learned to harness their power. Don't worry. Soon, the firewood-covered areas of the low mountain ignited, the flames raging fiercely after being doused with kerosene. Many silverhead ants were burned alive, but this only fueled the ant army's ferocity. Fearless and relentless, they surged upward like a tidal wave. The second wave of the ant army is emerging from the nest. Old Lu shouted. The worst-case scenario hadn't materialized, the number of flying ants was far fewer than anticipated. Suddenly, Old Lu cried out and crashed to the ground, knocked over by a massive flying ant. He plunged headfirst into a snowdrift, immediately swarmed and overwhelmed by a swarm of the insects. Qinming's heart leapt. He spotted a flying ant larger than a human head, its body crimson with silver markings. This creature had not only mutated but had likely undergone a second mutation. He charged forward, swinging his hammer. But the second-tier mutated flying ant was incredibly agile, dodging the blow instantly and swooping down toward Old Lu in the snowdrift. Qinming moved like lightning, closing the distance and slamming his hammer at the creature. The second-tier mutated flying ant, unwilling to be struck from behind while attacking Old Lu, swiftly evaded the blow. Enraged, it turned on Qinming, darting left and right in a relentless attack. Old Lu cursed and scrambled out of the snowdrift, hacking at the fist-sized flying ants with his sword. At my age, getting knocked over by an ant. I've completely lost face today. Am I really getting too old to lift my sword? Hiss, a second mutation super flying ant. Xiao Qin, can you handle this? Qinming quickly responded, warning, I'm fine. Just be careful yourself, there might be more second mutation flying ants. Old Lu's expression turned grave. You're right. The queen ant is a third-tier mutated creature, but she's not much of a fighter. They must be focusing on breeding these flying war ants. Qinming swung his long-handled black gold hammer repeatedly, striking the flying ant with metallic clangs like hammering iron. The creature was remarkably resilient. Still, it couldn't withstand Qinming's immense strength. Each strike cracked its carapace until it finally exploded with a pop. Damn it! 3 more super flying ants have appeared. Old Lu's face paled. At the foot of the mountain, 3 distinctly oversized flying ants buzzed menacingly as they ascended, followed by 6 smaller but still far stronger than ordinary flying ants. 3 second mutation ants and 6 first mutation ones. This insect nest is proving to be a real challenge. As for the ordinary silverhead ants, some had already climbed the mountain peak. Though the main force behind them had slowed down, they still surged upward upon spotting the 2 figures nearby. Almost there. Qinming said, blocking the 3 strongest flying ants. Hearing this, Old Lu swiftly lit the fuse. With a thunderous boom, the buried earth explosive detonated, triggering an avalanche. The rumbling snow buried countless silverhead ants beneath its crushing weight. They had timed it perfectly, calculating that the ant army was already on the verge of freezing. Buried under the snow, most would be unable to escape and would freeze to death. You think a puny ant can knock me off my feet? I'd never live down the shame. Old Lu roared, blocking a second mutation flying ant and engaging it in a fierce sword battle. Damn, this thing's tough. My sword can't even cut through it. Old Lu struggled, his hands moving frantically as ordinary flying ants swarmed around him. Qinming went all out, his body shimmering with golden energy waves. With thunderous crashes, he finally shattered 2 second mutation flying ants. Then, wielding his long-handled black gold hammer like a whirlwind, he sent ant corpses plummeting to the ground with sickening thuds. Don't interfere. Let me handle this myself. Old Lu, ever stubborn, finally slew the second mutation flying ant. After finishing off the silverhead ants that had climbed the mountain but hadn't yet frozen, the two men let out a collective sigh of relief. We've done the people a service by taking care of this early, Old Lu said, plopping down on the snow. If the queen ant undergoes a fourth mutation, the silverhead ant population will explode, leaving nothing in their wake. Not yet, Qin Ming warned. Another swarm is emerging from the cracks in the mountain. Old Lu's face paled at the news. Fortunately, this time there were no second mutation flying ants, just a dense mass of ordinary silverhead ants swarming up the slope. Fewer than before, Qin Ming observed. Once we clear these out, we should be done. Now that they couldn't trigger an avalanche, the silverhead ants below seemed to have received instructions to retreat to their nest before freezing. Let's head down and lure them out of the nest, Qin Ming suggested. We can kill them at close range. Even Qin Ming was exhausted by the end of the day, having been killing ants non-stop. Yet as shallow night drew to a close, countless silverhead ants continued to pour out of the nest. Old Lu, meanwhile, was completely drained, barely able to lift his sword. Fortunately, the area was remote, and no other creatures dared nest near the silverhead ants, so no mutant creatures had been drawn to the commotion. We'll continue tomorrow. Over the past 2 days, some villagers had ventured into the karst caves beneath the Great Rift Valley and emerged with high-quality weapons, causing a sensation that drew even more people to the area in search of treasure. Many of the weapons and armor were left behind by the dead scions of Kai Sha City's noble clans, naturally of exceptional quality. Qin Ming and Old Lu never imagined that their initial extermination of a large number of silverhead ants on the first day would lead to 3 consecutive days of relentless killing, yet they still hadn't eradicated them all. I think we're almost done for today. We could probably even storm the ant nest now. You've got a raven's tongue, old man. Best keep such talk to yourself. On the 4th day, as they walked and chatted, Qin Ming paused at the Great Rift Valley, rubbed his eyes, and confirmed he wasn't mistaken. A black mist, like a serpentine spirit, was rapidly coiling and swirling within the ravine. Look there, old man. At the Great Rift Valley. Qin Ming gestured. What am I supposed to see? There's nothing there, Old Lu replied, his face etched with confusion. Qin Ming fell silent, feigning blurry vision. His heart raced with unease as he secretly speculated that absorbing the mysterious liquid had somehow granted him the ability to perceive this unnatural black mist. Have you made any progress contacting those once prominent but now fallen clans I asked you to reach out to? One of them has agreed, Old Lu said. I don't think there will be any further issues. That's wonderful. Qin Ming exclaimed, overjoyed. You too. What were you gawking at over there? A voice suddenly called out from the distance. 2 figures emerged near the Great Rift Valley's entrance. Their imposing chi aura marked them as extremely dangerous experts, causing Qin Ming's heart to sink. Old Lu glanced at the emblems on their sleeves and whispered, those golden patterns on their sleeves mean they've received preliminary recognition from the Golden Thieves. They must be the leaders of Golden Rooster Ridge, the 2 strongest great bandits in the area. He fell silent, tugged Qin Ming forward, and began walking. Qin Ming was well aware of these great bandits, having heard numerous rumors about them recently. They were Fourth Awakeners, among the most powerful individuals in the local organizations. What are they doing at the Great Rift Valley? He wondered. Could the black mist be connected to them? Quit dawdling and get over here. One of the great bandits shouted. We're just passing through on our way to hunt in the mountains, Old Lu said, adopting a humble posture. The 2 great bandits appeared to be around 40 years old, their eyes cold and piercing. One of them grabbed Old Lu by the collar and hoisted him into the air. He's an awakener, but he's too old, useless. The great bandit remarked, tossing Old Lu aside, nearly causing him to lose his balance and fall. He approached Qin Ming and said, you're quite fortunate to have undergone awakening at such a young age. Then, grabbing Qin Ming by the collar, he continued, Golden Rooster Ridge will be recruiting in the next few days. Remember to sign up, understand? I've already memorized your face. The great bandit spoke calmly, his voice even, but his tone left no room for argument. Yes, sir. Don't worry, I'll take him to register myself, Old Lu quickly interjected, fearing Qin Ming's youthful recklessness might provoke the great bandit, leading to certain death. You're so old, are we just keeping you around to eat for free? The great bandit sneered. I meant I'll escort him to register, Old Lu clarified. The great bandit nodded, releasing Qin Ming's collar. I asked you a question earlier. Are you mute? Did you hear me? Another great bandit suddenly shouted, his voice cold and reprimanding. I was momentarily stunned. Yes, I'll register when the time comes, Qin Ming replied with a nod. I'll greet them. As they approached the ant nest, Old Lu erupted into a torrent of profanities, his anger boiling over. He was seething with pent-up rage. He quickly urged Qin Ming to remain calm, insisting he suppress his anger and focus on registering first. You're still young, yet your strength is already so formidable. You'll only grow stronger. Anything is possible. When the time comes. Qin Ming cut him off, declaring, when the time comes, I'll storm Golden Rooster Ridge alone and wipe out every bandit there. Old Lu immediately silenced him. Hush. Such words must never be spoken aloud. Think about it after your fourth or fifth awakening. The rest of their journey went smoothly. Upon breaching the ant nest, they confirmed that the silverhead ant army had indeed been nearly annihilated in the previous 3 days. The queen ant finally emerged, a silver-scaled insect. Though a third-tier mutated creature, she proved surprisingly inept in combat. Her only truly dangerous weapon was the luminous liquid she spat from her mouth, which possessed astonishing piercing power and could corrode armor. During their initial encounter, Qinming and Old Lu were nearly hit by the queen ant's unexpectedly powerful liquid spray. The first layer of their armor was pierced, but fortunately, steel plates protected their chests. The ensuing battle was swift and decisive. The strongest battle ants had already been eliminated, and without the protection of her silverhead ant swarm, the queen ant was quickly subdued by the duo. We've struck gold. Old Lu exclaimed, his eyes gleaming as he ventured deep into the ant nest and spotted honey wine sealed within ant wax. Though most of it had been consumed during the winter, even the remaining small quantity was incredibly valuable. Qinming cautioned, let's bury it for now. If we try to sell it, our status as second awakener will be exposed. The bandits at Golden Rooster Ridge are ruthless, if they find out, we'll be in trouble. Old Lu nodded in agreement, fully understanding the risks. Soon after, they discovered a pale golden spiritual substance. Their faces lit up with surprise and excitement, there was enough for both of them. Upon returning home, Qinming gazed at the pale golden liquid in the porcelain jar, his emotions surging, his heart pounding with excitement. Recent events had left him restless, but he knew that if he grew strong enough, any troubles he faced would become insignificant. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 50, Third Awakening. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Though it was shallow night, the dim light still allowed one to see clearly. In his room, Qinming took a deep breath, exhaled the stale air, banished distracting thoughts, and brushed away the restless dust from his mind. The sunstone, newly retrieved from its copper basin, glowed at its brightest. Its radiant light bathed Qinming's hair and illuminated the contours of his face. Bathed in the fireglow's reflection, even the windows and walls seemed gilded. Qinming sat motionless, resembling a scene from ancient texts, a temple bathed in the golden hues of sunset, its roof tiles gleaming faintly, the spiritual statue within bathed in the evening glow, serene and tranquil. Soon, he poured a portion of the pale golden liquid from the porcelain jar into a white bowl. The rich, fragrant aroma, drawn from the essence of honey wine, was intoxicating even before he drank it. Traveling merchants who had journeyed far and wide claimed that not even a single drop of this essence from the ant nest could be bought for a day gold coin. In the white bowl, the pale golden spiritual substance shimmered like condensed sunlight from the old world, radiating a soft, brilliant light. Wisps of golden mist curled upward, swirling around the liquid. Qinming sealed the porcelain jar and drained the half bowl of spiritual substance in one gulp. His mouth filled with a sweet, honeyed fragrance, tinged with a subtle wine aroma that lingered endlessly. This was 1,000 times better than the bitter taste of the blood snake's gallbladder, leaving him craving another bowl. In an instant, Qinming experienced its miraculous effects. His body rapidly heated up, the results immediate and striking, as if he had transformed into a living furnace. He stepped into the courtyard, where the biting winter wind suddenly felt warm against his skin. Snowflakes fell like a gentle spring rain, making him feel as if he had been transported to early spring. Qinming's entire being radiated light. The vitality of his flesh and blood surged, repelling the harsh winter chill and causing dense white mist to billow around him. Drenched in sweat, his body glistened with a layer of silver light that seemed to melt into liquid silver before solidifying into countless golden needles that erupted from within him. These golden needles threaded themselves through the silver clay, weaving through it even while he remained awake, forming the golden jade garment, a phenomenon that had previously only occurred during his deep slumber. This is different from before, Qinming mused, carefully observing the extraordinary signs that had accompanied his initial awakening, now undergoing a qualitative transformation. He was certain, this was the process of converting into heavenly light. He began moving in the courtyard, practicing the awakening techniques recorded in the Silk Scroll. The movements of his body, the coordination of his breath, and the tempering of his spirit were all integral parts of the practice. Qinming felt no fatigue as he tirelessly practiced the technique. A refreshing qi surged through him, and a dense vitality spread through his flesh and blood, even causing the corners of his eyes and eyebrows to glow. He knew the third awakening had officially begun. Heavenly light was being born within him, triggering miraculous transformations. The ancients called this realm rebirth, and they were right. Each significant improvement in physical attributes feels like undergoing a postnatal congenital transformation. The birth of heavenly light within the human body wasn't caused by superficial phenomena like the shimmering golden ripples on his skin. Its true source lay deep within his core, the external manifestations merely symptoms of this profound internal shift. At that moment, Qin felt as if lightning had struck his heart. With a thunderous roar, a blinding heavenly light erupted from his sea of heart, piercing directly into his flesh and blood. This process then spread to his vital organs, each awakening in turn. Some areas glowed like the dawn, radiating golden light and brimming with primordial vitality, while others resembled a starry river cascading into a dream, piercing through the mist to reveal constellations blazing with celestial brilliance. Qin entire body radiated light. Even his jet-black hair seemed to burn with luminous flames, and an intensely concentrated force of awakening enveloped him completely. Now, even his eyes emitted mysterious heavenly light. This was the third awakening, and if fully realized, it would permeate every inch of his being, heavenly light born everywhere, present everywhere. As the daylight gradually faded, Qin grew increasingly calm, blending seamlessly with his surroundings. His movements flowed with effortless grace, devoid of any artificiality. The silk scroll offered only a concise description of the heavenly light, focusing instead on the profound elevation of one's life essence. I was right, Qin realized. By consistently practicing the techniques recorded in the silk scroll, the heavenly light will naturally manifest, strengthening my qi, spirit, and vitality. Though the silk scroll didn't explicitly detail the heavenly light, its emergence was inevitable, a result of diligent practice. But what about the heavenly light force? Qin frowned. The heavenly light force required specific cultivation techniques. He could only hope that tonight, as he slept, childhood memories would resurface, allowing him to turn to the third page of the silk scroll for answers and resolve his doubts. Next, Qin began practicing combat techniques. After a moment's thought, he discarded the long-handled black gold hammer and gripped the wood-chopping knife instead. Instantly, a cold light flashed as Qin felt a radiant energy surging from within his flesh and blood, as if about to erupt. Could this be the birth of the heavenly light? He focused intently, combining sword techniques with unarmed combat, executing a series of highly efficient killing strikes. Some of these movements were directly derived from his sword technique, creating thunderous gusts of wind in the courtyard. It was only when shallow night was nearly over that Qin finally paused, feeling a slight fatigue. After dinner, old Lu came knocking at the courtyard gate. Though Qin body no longer glowed like a furnace, it still radiated a vibrant life force, its fresh aura reminiscent of all things newly sprung to life. Old Lu stared in a daze, the mere sight of him evoking the illusion of melting ice and snow, sprouting grass and trees, a scene of flourishing vitality. You just went straight into your third awakening without any preparation? He asked in a hushed voice. Qin nodded. After their journey through the Great Mountain, they knew each other's capabilities well enough to dispense with pretense. Old Lu's envy was palpable. With spiritual substance in hand, why haven't you calmed your mind, focused your spirit, and adjusted your state? What are you waiting for? Qin asked. You think everyone can just recklessly charge ahead and achieve awakening like you? Old Lu retorted. Truth be told, he lacked confidence. Even with the refined essence from the ant nest, he couldn't guarantee a successful third awakening. After all, there was no predicting how far each individual could progress. At the very least, the threshold of the first awakening blocked 90% of aspirants. Past sages estimated that even with spiritual substance, 60 to 70% would still fail to cross this initial barrier, unable to achieve even a single awakening. Clearly, achieving the first awakening didn't guarantee smooth sailing. Even with spiritual substance, 60 to 70% would be blocked again during the second awakening. The same had happened during his third awakening. How could old Lu, at his advanced age, possibly have the confidence to succeed? Qin reassured him, trying to boost his spirits. You need to believe you can definitely break through the entire nascent realm. Old Lu sighed, lamenting his lifelong habit of faltering at crucial moments. He could have undergone awakening during his golden age, but an injury sustained in the mountains led to a severe illness that set him back half a year. As a youth, he had traveled to Kaisha City, poised to apprentice under a renowned master. However, the elder had to leave unexpectedly and met a violent end on the edge of the desolate, eternally dark desert. After returning home, old Lu grew close to the veterans of the mountain patrol group. Once, they attempted to jointly acquire a mysterious resource, but barely had they entered the mountains when they encountered a rampaging named beast. The aberrant, merely passing through without targeting them specifically, nearly annihilated their entire group. Old Lu suffered severe qi depletion, and his survival was nothing short of miraculous. As Qin listened to old Lu's rambling, he couldn't help but wonder if the old man was truly cursed with bad luck. This mountain expedition with you is the only thing that's gone smoothly in ages, old Lu sighed. Everything else has been a series of setbacks and complications. You call that smooth sailing? It took 4 days to clear a single ant nest, and we even saw flying ants evolve that we'd never encountered before, Qin said, giving him a peculiar look. How are the people around you? They haven't been affected, have they? Qinming asked casually, not believing in superstitions or any of that nonsense. There. Alright, old Lu replied hesitantly. What do you mean, alright? Qinming asked suspiciously. Like you, I wasn't originally from this village. My grandfather on this side found me when I was 6 years old. Maybe because I was so young, I have no memory of my birth parents. I imagine they must have been struggling, or perhaps they're long gone. Otherwise, why would I have been abandoned in the icy wilderness? Strangely enough, despite severe frostbite, I somehow recovered and survived. Qinming didn't know how to comfort him. Don't dwell on the past, he said. I think you should go back and calm your mind. Drink the spiritual substance immediately, without hesitation. Seize the moment and achieve your third awakening in one go. That's what I was thinking too. I need to be decisive. Old Lu declared, pulling a porcelain jar from his chest. He unscrewed the lid and gulped down the contents in one go. Qinming stared in disbelief. You just came here and started drinking. Why didn't you go home and calm down first? Old Lu replied, I've felt things have been going so smoothly when I'm with you lately. I came to bask in your good fortune again. He grew increasingly agitated, his body burning as if on fire, a luminous mist gradually rising from within him. I've actually succeeded. He wanted to burst into laughter but had to suppress his voice. Qinming said, don't be so superstitious. You always had this potential. You just created mental barriers that made you hesitant, afraid to take that final step. That's not how it works, old Lu insisted, pointing at the night sky. Some things you can't dismiss. I believe all my misfortunes stem from that blood-stained kite I saw as a foolish youth. Qinming's expression turned serious. Exactly where was it? Back then, I was standing by the fire spring at the village entrance. The kite must have drifted to the highest point above the center of Twin Tree Village. Before dawn broke, old Lu wrapped his animal hide coat tighter and sprinted back to his home. Late that night, Qinming felt as if a golden jade garment had materialized on his body. He wondered if ancient emperors, who were buried in pearl-studded jade shrouds bound with golden threads in their quest for immortality, had heard something about this phenomenon. Qinming fell into a deep sleep. In the latter half of the night, he experienced the same half-dream, half-awake state as before, and saw his younger self again. Still wearing his tattered clothes, he glanced down and noticed two toes peeking through the worn-out shoes. This time, he finally caught a clear glimpse of the man speaking to him, though only briefly as the man leaned in to examine the silk scroll. Qinming realized this must be a relative, they shared a resemblance. The man appeared to be in his early 50s, with graying temples, calloused hands, and patched, worn-out clothes. Could this be my grandfather? Qinming speculated. With anticipation, the silk scroll flipped to the third page, revealing densely packed characters and human-shaped diagrams. Yet there was still no mention of the heavenly light force. Following the awakening techniques described on the second page, the text quickly mentioned the five senses and primal intuition. Qinming speculated that the fourth awakening might be related to perception. But what about the heavenly light force? Qinming nearly broke out of his meditative state, almost waking from his dream. Fortunately, he regained his composure and continued reading, memorizing the third page of the silk scroll. Or perhaps it wasn't so much memorization as a reliving of his childhood experiences, resurfacing with his third awakening. Then, he made a new discovery. A marginal note at the bottom of the page mentioned the heavenly light force. Qinming finished reading with a blank expression. Why does this feel like it's scolding me? The first half of the note essentially said, the heavenly light has already been born. Why can't you cultivate your own heavenly light force? The note then offered guidance in a single word, merge. The second half of the note was mocking, cultivating the techniques in this silk scroll requires a master to guide you. If, after being taught step by step, you remain so dull-witted, you might as well abandon the scroll. Curse me all you want, Qinming muttered as he awoke. I cultivated it myself. No one guided me. The deep night had receded, and a new day had dawned. After breakfast, he immediately went to the courtyard to practice the awakening techniques from the silk scroll. Seek within yourself. This key phrase had caught his eye on the third page of the scroll. As he demonstrated the awakening technique, the heavenly light within him stirred restlessly, just as it had the previous day. Finally, as if unable to contain itself, a mysterious ripple appeared on his fingertips and skin, erupting into heavenly light force. With a whoosh, the wood-chopping knife flew into his hand the moment his fingers brushed the hilt. He tested the force lightly, exerting only a slight pressure with his fingers. The heavenly light force surged forth, carving a large notch into the blade. This is no simple matter. I've finally cultivated my own heavenly light force. He focused intently, testing it repeatedly. His thoughts naturally drifted to the sword manual, which also contained records of heavenly light. During the third awakening, many struggled to master even a single type of heavenly light. Qinming believed his potential extended beyond just one, especially with the three-colored flower in his possession. Moreover, the Silk Scrolls commentary emphasized the word, fusion, clearly urging future practitioners to cultivate multiple forms of heavenly light. Qin heard the commotion at the village entrance. As expected, the people from Golden Rooster Ridge had arrived, seeking to recruit awakeners into their ranks. Everything's ready, all I need is a good sword. Qin retrieved the jade iron. This mysterious resource didn't require laborious forging, simply melting it into a weapon would suffice, making the process much simpler and quicker. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel.